The AR-15, one of the most prominent rifles ever made and one of the most sought after by combatants all over the world. But while it's currently one of the most popular choices for a fighting rifle, it wasn't always seen as a top performer. Indeed, some have viewed the AR-15 as an unreliable weapon incapable of adapting to harsh conditions. And while that wasn't the case, this belief of the AR-15's unreliability encouraged the development of a number of rifles intended to replace it. And perhaps the most prolific of these is the HK416. Due to a combination of miscommunication, anecdotal evidence, and user error, there are some who view the AR-15 as unreliable. But while some of these claims are likely exaggerated, there certainly were situations in which AR-15s fell short of expectations. In the latter 20th century, some US military members reported experiencing malfunctions with their M4s and M16s. Many of these were attributed to the unforgiving conditions of warfare, but some of these failures were determined to be related to the inherent design of the AR-15. The AR-15 uses what's called a direct impingement gas system. When a bullet is fired, gas travels down the barrel behind the bullet. At a certain point, some gas bleeds off into a gas tube located above the barrel. This gas travels back into the rifle and pushes on the gas key attached to the bolt carrier, which cycles the weapon and loads the next round. It's a simple and effective system, and even before the War on Terror, had already been used to great effect in multiple different conflicts. But there is an inherent flaw with this system. The gas that travels back into the rifle is incredibly hot, and carries debris from the combustion of the fired round. This leads to more carbon fouling in the chamber, and typically, more malfunctions. But this alone wasn't that significant of a problem. With proper maintenance, the AR-15 is a perfectly reliable weapon. The problem comes with the popularity and adaptability of the AR-15 platform. The American military's M4 carbine is perhaps the most well-known and widely issued variant of the AR-15. It was initially intended as a weapon for support personnel, such as vehicle drivers. The idea was that the M4 was a more compact rifle and could serve as a backup weapon. With a 14.5-inch barrel and adjustable stock, the rifle was able to be customized for every size and shape of soldier. But while it may have been initially intended as a backup weapon, more and more military personnel realized that a compact rifle provided a lot of advantages over the M16 that was largely issued to frontline troops. It was lighter, easier to carry around, and provided customization for the shooter's preference. Traits that all users appreciated. What this meant was that many different units began adopting the M4 carbine. From Army chefs to Navy SEALs, everyone wanted to use this smaller rifle. So, the M4 carbine was used in many different roles, from being used as a pseudo-machine gun for suppression to close-quarters combat. The M4 was forced into being a jack of all trades. The problem was that the M4 was never intended for such a wide breadth of usage. While it could adequately accomplish some of these tasks, it wasn't always the ideal choice. In the late 1990s, this issue was at the forefront of one man's mind: Delta Force Small Arms Specialist Larry Vickers. Delta Force is a unit that frequently engages in close-quarters combat. For a significant portion of the later 20th century, they had used the H&K MP5 submachine gun to great effect, then the CAR-15 rifle, then the M4. The M4 was an adequate weapon for Delta's needs, but the unit wanted something shorter. Delta had experimented with short-barrel AR-15s, but they found them too unreliable for their requirements, particularly when suppressed. While short-barrel AR-15s are very commonplace these days, there were problems with a short-barreled AR-15 in the late 1990s. The direct impingement system works best in a rifle with a longer barrel. With a longer barrel, the ratio of gas that goes out of the barrel and goes through the gas tube is balanced. An adequate amount of gas goes back into the rifle, without any excess. This is why the M4 has a 14.5-inch barrel. At the time, it was determined that this was the shortest length of barrel that would not significantly imbalance gas flow. But in a shorter barrel AR-15, more gas enters the gas tube and travels back into the rifle. This causes a couple problems. Firstly, it means more carbon fouling, leading to a dirtier gun more prone to failures. But more significantly, the extra gas causes the gun to cycle more violently, which leads to quicker wearing down of parts. It's a well-documented phenomenon that short-barrel AR-15s require more frequent parts replacement compared to their longer counterparts. And over time, the excess gas can erode the gas port, meaning that even more gas than intended enters back into the rifle, and further unbalances the amount of gas that's supposed to enter the system. And when used in conjunction with a suppressor, the excess back pressure becomes even worse, as more gas is bled off into the gas tube and into the rifle. All this extra pressure puts a significant amount of stress on parts, which leads to more frequent parts breakage, not to mention that the excess gas can leak out of the gun when fired, making the weapon overall unpleasant to shoot. As a small arms specialist, Larry Vickers had been looking for a solution to this problem, and it so happened that while talking with an executive at the German firearm company HK, he noticed a schematic of what appeared to be an M4 on the wall. But upon closer inspection, it was revealed that this was no M4 at all. Rather, it was a rifle with the layout of an AR-15, but with an entirely different internal system, the short-stroke gas piston system. In a short-stroke gun, rather than the gas traveling directly into the rifle, the gas pushes on a piston located above the barrel. This piston in turn pushes on the bolt carrier and cycles the weapon. There is one key advantage to this system. Since the gas does not travel back into the rifle, much less dirt accumulates there, reducing the chance of a malfunction. And since the pressure of the gas is transferred to a piston rather than traveling back into the rifle, a short-stroke piston system with a short barrel does not impart nearly as much stress on parts, compared to a short-barreled AR-15. Because of this, short-stroke gas piston rifles are generally easier to set up for suppressor use, and are generally more reliable for suppressed use. One advantage that special operations units were particularly interested in was in its operation after being submerged in water. In a traditional AR-15, the rifle needs to be drained of water after being submerged in it. If it isn't, water can remain in the gas tube and will cause the gas tube to burst if the weapon is fired. This is a catastrophic failure that cannot be fixed easily in the field, but with a short-stroke gas piston system, there is no gas tube. Since it uses a piston instead, there's no need to drain the weapon as thoroughly after it's been submerged. The rifle in the drawing Larry Vickers saw was depicted with a short-stroke gas piston system. In fact, the specific one in the schematic was derived from H&K's G36, a previous rifle made by H&K that used the short-stroke gas piston system. The idea behind the drawing had been simple: take the internals of a G36 and see if it could fit into an AR-15 body. Larry Vickers, and subsequently Delta Force Command, was sold on the idea, and thus, development on what would become the HK416 began. The initial proposal was conceived in the late 1990s, but it wasn't until 2005 that Delta Force began replacing their M4 carbines with HK416s. And since then, many militaries around the world have adopted the weapon. The armed forces of Norway, France, and Poland all have adopted the HK416 in varying capacities, to name a few. And even Germany's own Bundeswehr will be replacing the venerable G36 rifle with the HK416A8, an updated version of the HK416. Perhaps the rifle's most famous outing was on May 2, 2011, when members of the US Navy's DevGru unit stormed a compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, and killed Osama bin Laden. Almost all operators on that mission were using the HK416, and obviously used it to great effect. After the operation, there was no doubt. The HK416 was a weapon ready for the harshest conditions of war. And to date, it's still highly regarded as a rifle that can be counted on, no matter the situation. So, why did the HK416 succeed as an M4 replacement, where so many others failed? There have been a number of attempts to replace the M4 carbine in the American military. To date, most have failed to do so. The HK416 is a rare exception. Part of it is certainly due to the rifle's reliability. In testing, the HK416 suffered significantly less failures than the M4. But the other reason has to do with ergonomics. The AR-15's layout of controls are unmatched. The mag release, safety, and bolt catch are all in places that are easy to reach and use. And to this day, it's hard to find a rifle that's anywhere close in regards to ease of use. Rather than be different, the HK416 clones the ergonomics of the AR-15 almost exactly. Every control is in the exact spot you'd expect to see them on an M4. This means a user trained on the M4 will have very little issue picking up and using the 416, and that all the intuitive controls of the AR-15 are retained on the 416. And the 416 also comes with the same adjustable stock that the M4 has, making it easy to calibrate stock length to the shooter. So, what made the HK416 unique in its success is that it was not unique. Rather, it simply copied the best parts of the AR-15 and integrated them into the rifle. Evidenced by the variety of adopters globally, the HK416 has been a huge triumph. To this day, the HK416 sees widespread use, even though some believe that the weapon has been surpassed by others. Some state that the cost of the rifle is too high, while others believe AR-15 technology has advanced to the point where the advantages the 416 once had over the AR-15 have been diminished. There are rumors that DevGru, the unit that arguably made the HK416 famous, will be replacing their 416s with another rifle, though that remains to be seen. But perhaps there's merit to it. The 416 is a heavier weapon than an AR-15 of similar length, and other short-stroke rifles exist now that are arguably more advanced. But the track record of the HK416 cannot be denied. It continues to see combat around the world, and will likely see use for many years to come. It is undoubtedly an excellent choice for any professional user. It's no surprise then that the HK416 has been a huge mainstay in video games, particularly after its role in the Bin Laden raid became public. From games like Battlefield to Ghost Recon, many popular shooters sought to have the latest and greatest that special operations were using in their games. In shooters, the HK416 is often portrayed very similarly to an M4. Shooting it feels the same, reloading it feels the same, and to the unaware, it even looks the same. This isn't the result of a software developer copying and pasting. This is a result of the guns being that similar to operate. Just like in the real world, if you're familiar with the M4, you'll need very little time getting used to the HK416. And as the M4 is a popular weapon across many games, so is the HK416. In many shooters, the German rifle is considered one of the best options to choose. When you have the ergonomics of an M4, and the ability to mount as many attachments as an M4, it's no surprise that the rifle is just as popular as an M4. When it comes to firearms, reliability is king. The value of having a weapon that will work in any situation cannot be understated. There are weapons that are lighter, smaller, and cheaper than the HK416, but few can match the 416's proven track record. Additionally, the 416 is also an easy weapon to use, owing to its AR-15 adjacent controls. Perhaps in the future, a new rifle will take its place. But for now, the HK416 has, and will continue to be, a weapon ready for war.